Oh, the countdown clock has begun. It's all happening. Welcome everyone, Woman-Jeka. I'm really excited to see all of you, not that I can actually see you, but so many people here packed out at the Wheeler Centre. We are here as a collection of stories themed around place. And this place, where we meet tonight, carries more than 40,000 years of stories. We're in Kneen, on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung people of the Coleman nations. And we offer our deepest respects to their elders, past, present and upcoming, and to the elders of any other First Nations communities here with us tonight. Now, this project was a bit like a snowball. It gathered momentum right from the start. So 1 year after our first writing workshop, I hit send and the full book manuscript zoomed off to Martin and Coco at Affirm Press. And the reason that we are here snowballed like that is because people believed in it. They understood its value. They backed it and they helped to make it happen. So time is short, the thank you list is very long. So I just want to offer a broad but heartfelt thanks to everyone who got behind this book and helped to make it happen, including our project partners. Your names all appear on pages 219 and 220, and I can't thank you enough. But there's one group of people that deserves special mention, and they're sitting in the front rows here and with me, probably sprinkled up the back too. Some can't be here tonight, but they're watching on the live feed. They're watching us from Geelong, from Ballarat, Brisbane, Mexico City, Sri Lanka, and the UK. Hi! I feel so lucky to have met this incredible group of people. Their grace, their strength, their good humour, their hard work and their creative talents have blown me away. And when you open these pages and read what's inside, I promise you, you will be blown away too. So to the 40-odd writers and artists who collaborated with me on this book, thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for trusting me with your words. Together we have made something really beautiful. Place is essential to human life. Places anchor us, they connect us and sustain us. Places, quite literally, common ground. But it can also be unfamiliar or dangerous territory. And the stories and poems in We Are Here explore the richness of place, from big cities to remote rainforests, from high countries, cattle stations, to offshore prison camps, from childhood homes to dodgy boarding houses and cold street corners. These stories and poems take us there. Using place as a portal, the writers explore common human experiences that will strike a chord in all of us. But some of them also take us to darker places, experiences we hope we will never have to endure. Yet, these writers did endure. They are here. As author Benjamin Law has said, this book is a beautiful testament to survival, resilience and hope. It's also just a fantastic read. The writers worked really hard to make their stories and poems shine. So the project We Are Here had three aims. First, tap into the creative talents and amplify the voices of a hugely diverse group of people who are so often overlooked, people who've gone without a home. Second, to research understandings of place amongst this group of people. And third, to change hearts and minds. That's a big one, and it matters, because when it comes to homelessness, there's a huge amount of misinformation floating around out there. Stereotypes and stigma and myths, hostility and blame. You see it online, you see it in the tabloid media, you see it coming out of the mouths of powerful people who should know better. And it causes real harm, it causes damage. And that's an injustice, and that's one that deserves to be met head on and met creatively. Because people do not decide to become homeless. It's not a lifestyle choice. It's not down to laziness or bad character or some moral failing. I'm preaching to the converted here, I suspect. It's about circumstances, bad luck, unexpected life events, the world dealing you a blow. And importantly, it's also about deeper structural problems. Australia's desperate national shortage of social housing, our punitive and inadequate welfare system, and people falling through those cracks. The biggest myth of all is that it couldn't happen to us. Maybe that's why the stereotypes and myths persist, because the scary thing is, homelessness could happen to us. Believe me, it can happen to anyone. And that's a really uncomfortable truth, but as a society, it's one that needs to be faced if we're going to fix the problem. So this is a celebration, so I'm going to lighten up a bit now. This book is a world first, as far as I know, hasn't been done before. It's also an idea whose time has come. And with its publication, the contributors are claiming their rightful place in the public conversation, in literature, and in the world. So thank you all for being with us tonight. Now I'd like to welcome Councillor Philip Loulou from the City of Melbourne, which supported the project through its arts grant program, to say a few words. He's going to have to freestyle with the mic, unfortunately. Welcome, Councillor. Yeah, you can...
Thank you and good evening. My name is Councillor Philip Loulou and I'm from the City of Melbourne. Before I begin, I'd like to formally acknowledge that we're here on the land of the Kulin Nation and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to acknowledge everyone here and it's great to see a packed room here in the Wheeler Centre. So first and foremost, I just wanted to say this project was supported by City of Melbourne Arts Grant in recognition of the important contributions writers make to our great city's creative heart. The grant supported the contribution of 37 writers and 4 visual artists, and enabled them to tell their stories in their own words, directly and honestly. The list of contributors aptly illustrates the varied and multicultural face of Melbourne. But rather than dwelling on these differences, the anthology explores the unifying and very humane theme of place. While some stories touch on what it's like to be homeless, others explore special childhood places, city life, the ideas of home and experiences of community and belonging. As a local resident living in the city, I actually live 5 minutes away from here, I see the realities of homelessness on our streets on my way to work. And as a councillor, I always wonder what me and my fellow councillors can do to help this situation. There's no doubt that homelessness is one of the most pressing issues facing the City of Melbourne today. I know there is no easy solution, but we are putting our minds to it, as well as the minds of our best and brightest, and we're trying. Earlier this month, the City of Melbourne brought together representatives from Melbourne's corporate and property sectors, philanthropists, charities and other local governments to identify suitable buildings to help deliver more beds for people sleeping rough. The aim is to provide a greater supply of supported accommodations in conjunction with the necessary wraparound services to help build pathways into secure housing for people experiencing homelessness. Major corporates supporters of the initiative include Lendlease and philanthropic groups such as Housing All Australians, while service providers include the Salvation Army, Vincent Care, Melbourne City Mission, and Launch Housing. The City of Melbourne is also partnering with the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation to set up a fund to take pledges and donations for this homelessness initiative, to allow corporate supporters and individuals to contribute to the project. And I welcome that anybody who want to be part of that to have a look on our website, and also, if not, to contact the City of Melbourne directly. Meanwhile, at the national level, our Lord Mayor's Sally Capp is also using her position as on the Council of Capital City Lord Mayors to raise the profile of homelessness issue and advocate for a national solution. Change won't take place overnight, but hopefully with the cumulative effect of talking, meeting, advocating and reading the amazing stories contained within this book, we'll get a bit closer to making a real life change for the better. I'd like to comment to editor, researcher and writer Meg on a fantastic job, and of course thanks to all our talented authors. The writing is of the highest quality and the book contains insight, wisdom, compassion and humour. It is a fantastically engaging read and will no doubt have wide appeal. I'm looking forward to hearing some of the authors tonight, and also I wish everyone here the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we've got a bit of a treat now. We're going to have a sneak preview, a freebie audio presentation from some of the contributors in the book. I'm going to introduce them one by one. They are Jody, Ayub, Rod and Claire. Jody Letts is going to speak first. Jody is a former Defence Force worker who found herself living out of a van in the Melbourne CBD while suffering from work-related injuries, illnesses and mental health issues. Jody is committed to sharing her lived experiences through the peer education and support program run by the Council to Homeless Persons. They're one of our project partners. Working with them, Jody educates members of the public around homelessness and advocates for positive change. She also contributes to consumer participation activities with Dental Health Services Victoria and the Department of Veteran Affairs. And Jody was a member in our series of writing workshops that kicked off the project, hosted by Launch Housing, another important project partner. And Jody's going to read from her piece, The Reservoir.
Thanks, Meg. My brain is hardwired to react positively to water. I was introduced to it early in life, almost from my first breaths. My father's career saw him roaming the rural landscape, ensuring townships and farmers had adequate water supplies. Country Victoria offered beautiful landscapes, Indigenous plants, rich cultural heritage and endless opportunities for play. Water has shaped the backdrop of almost every memory I hold dear. Even now, being near water calms and connects me, increases my innovation and insight, can even help heal what's broken. For our family's 3 young explorers, the historic Krissy Reservoir was a treasure trove. From its abundant natural and man-made features, we created endless storylines. Dressed in old flannelette shirts, baggy jeans and wide-brimmed hats, we panned for fool's gold around the reservoir's 3-kilometre perimeter, celebrating our success as rich, famous prospectors. We made fishing poles from sticks, string and unwilling worms we dug up, trying our hand at fishing for a mighty Murray cod, yellow belly or redfin to take home for dinner. We'd recycle those sticks into swagman's poles, wandering around until we found the coolabah tree, where we'd wait for the jumbuck to come and drink from the billabong. On the hillside was a mound of excavated chalk rocks that we used to build forts from which we'd keep watch for tall ships entering the bay. Or we'd create old-fashioned school, using the thin flat rocks as slate writing tablets. In the surrounding bush, elaborate costumes and makeup artistry set the scene for Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus and their donkey voyaging across the desert to Jerusalem, lugging a picnic basket packed with drinks and sandwiches. The concrete filter beds that stored the township's water become the bell towers of the Notre Dame Cathedral. We'd staged many devious spells, manhunts, attacks and captures before Quasimodo freed Esmeralda and re-entered the world hailed as a hero. Whenever we found a lost frog, rabbit or bird, we'd collect vegetation and recreate the habitat at home, taking shifts to nurse them back to health. We remained hopeful, despite all the times Mum said, "You should have left the damn thing where you found it. You're wasting your time, it will die by the morning." And she was always right. Surrounded on all sides by water storage facilities, we'd received a daily warning from Mum. "Don't you kids go near that water, you'll get sucked down the pipes and spat out someone's kitchen tap." We weren't sure how serious to take this threat, but it lingered in the back of our minds. Mum would go wild if we came home with holes in our pants or mud all over the new clothes she'd sewn overnight, ready for Sunday school or ballroom dancing with our grandparents. Even worse, if we come home wet. Big trouble was an understatement. Spying a turtle floating in the dark water, entangled in plastic packaging, we'd lean out as far as humanly possible, the others holding our legs in the effort to rescue the poor creature without getting wet. Who knows how deep the water really was? Testing it out was never an option. Saving the wildlife and returning home bone dry was our only objective. We weren't always successful. Our white lies about water fights with hoses rarely passed our mum's truth test, and we'd be sent to bed without dinner just like young Max in Where the Wild Things Are. Drifting off to sleep, we'd imagine floating across the reservoir in a tiny wooden boat, encountering magical forests, monsters lurking in the trees, and wonderful adventures awaiting us on our own forbidden ocean. Those memories are almost 40 years old. Standing on the reservoir's bank today, the place carries a ghostly feeling of the past, half there, half not. Our old house is gone, and the area has been redeveloped for public use, for bushwalking, swimming, fishing. Places change, but in my heart and mind, the reservoir remains a place of enchantment, mystery and exploration, the home ground of my childhood imagination, a place like nowhere else in the world.
Thank you, Jody, for carrying us back to that magical, beautiful place. Now we're going to hear from Ayub Abdibar. He arrived in Australia as a 6-year-old refugee from Somalia. Placed in foster care, he later became homeless. A series of foster care homes. Ayub now lives in a share house in Carlton North and is happy to call Melbourne home. He's passionate about social justice. He works as a political advisor on topics such as the Australian African community and the environment, and assists people from low socio-economic situations to find safe housing. He also has an obsession with sports, whether watching or playing, and is happy to strike up a conversation about climate change should the opportunity arise. Ayub's going to share his story, Handle with Care, which was first published in The Big Issue, another one of our project partners. Ayub.
Thank you. I'm extremely grateful to all the families and the people who opened their homes and hearts to me. But there's always been this sense of belonging missing from my life. Maintaining any connection with my culture and background while I was in state care was extremely difficult. I never met any other person of colour while I was in care, and all of my foster families were very white. It was isolating to be the only black kid. I never had a chance to speak to people whose stories and backgrounds were similar to mine. I was evicted from state care and became homeless before my 18th birthday. Not many people know that in all Australian states, except Tasmania and South Australia, we cut off all kids in state care, including those with foster care families, when they turn 18. For me, and most other kids like me, that meant no ongoing emotional or financial support, no case manager, nothing. Within 1 year, 35% of these kids, like myself, become homeless. While most of my friends were celebrating their 18th birthday, finishing high school, or getting their driver's license, I was trying to figure out where I was going to sleep that night and searching for my next meal. It felt like a nauseating spiral with no end. The extreme sense of anxiety, social isolation and fear I felt as a young homeless man was terrifying. These were meant to be some of the most memorable and formidable years of my life. Instead, I was trying to make it through each hour, each day, desperately holding on to what was left of my sense of pride, self-worth, self-worth that got harder the longer I was on the streets. There's continuing to be this crushing stigma around young homeless people that it's somehow our fault. We don't have a roof over our heads, that we have a criminal history or a substance abuse issue, that we're out of control and dangerous, but most of us have suffered trauma, neglect, abuse. Homelessness is just a result of all of this. For me, there is no family to turn to when something goes wrong. There never was. I was really surprised that so many other kids I met on the streets had a state care background just like me. They had nowhere else to go. Breaking the cycle of homelessness when you're young and don't have a support network or a stable income is almost impossible. How can you go for a job interview when you haven't showered or eaten? Even if you do get a job, which landlord will give you a 12-month lease to an 18-year-old with no rental history or references? The barriers of having a normal life were enormous for me. Thanks to the tireless assistance of a social worker, I was able to break the spiral after 3 years and secure a room in a commission flat. I'm so proud of how far I've come. I'm now 30, and I have a home, a full-time job that I love, friends that feel like family, and I feel confident enough to make plans for the future. I'm also a proud ambassador of Homestretch campaign, which is fighting to extend the age of state care in Victoria from 18 to 21, as it has been in places such as the UK, US and Canada and New Zealand. I've had to fight my whole life, and I'll continue to fight for this. Thank you. I just want to let the audience know that Victoria has actually changed the law to extend the legal foster care age from 18 to 21. And I'm nearly 32.
Thank you, Ayub, and you were part of making that change. That's really something. Thank you for that very moving piece, sharing that with us. Now we're going to hear from Roderick Waller. Rod was born in Yorkshire in 1948 to a working class family of shipbuilders. In 1971, he immigrated to Australia. He has worked as a jackaroo, a UN economist, and a consultant in developing Asia-Pacific countries. Two passions are nature and creative writing. Rod has read his writing publicly right here, before, at Yorkshire Winter, Apollo Bay Writers Festival, and events run by Rumours magazine, another one of our project partners. He's the founder of the Port Vila Poetry Society in Vanuatu. He is gregarious by nature and inherited from his father the dry wit of Yorkshire humour. I can confirm this because Rod was also part of our writing workshops. And Rod's going to read an abridged version of his story, Jackaroo. Thanks, Rod.
Thanks, Meg, and thanks for coming. Lovely to see you all. And special thanks to Philippa Armstrong from Rumours and Meg also for their generosity of spirit. Absolutely wonderful. And it's sure is a signal to society by a full crowd that homelessness is an urgent issue. By coincidence, this is a story that happened in 1971 from one of the last of the £10 emigrants, £10 POMs. So it's simply called Jackaroo. On Rundle Street Mall, Adelaide, at Mrs. Mack's guest house. Been there a year, wasting and drinking, when I spotted an ad in the Adelaide Courier. Wanted Jackaroo, Balcanoona Station, Flinders Ranges. I got the job. I pay $120 a week, a room in the stockman's quarters, 10 feet square, tin roof, grubby walls, doorless wardrobe, rusty bedstead, lumpy mattress and cracked window panes, torn fly screen, one dirty light bulb, dead flies and goanna shit everywhere. My place. The brutal landscape, the sweet-smelling salt bush and the rugged range trails and searing heat was now my place. I was a quintessential pommy jackaroo, green as a Granny Smith. The stockman taught me skills working the sheep station, all 1,500 square miles of it. Never expected to become skilled in throwing a bullock, then brand, or throw a freshly shorn fleece on the tables, ear tag lambs, kill, butcher the weekly mutton ration, maintain windmills and pumps, shoot roos, tan roo skins to trade with R.M. Williams. I learned to muster on horseback in the high ranges and the flat plains stretching down to Lake Frome. Learned to saddle up, shoe a horse, learned to get in with the tough men on camp, learned to light a fire with twigs of blue bush and boil a billy, and never forgetting to throw in a gum leaf for flavour. Only once was an ugly event that occurred one Sunday morning. The sun was already shimmering. It was fierce heat. Around dawn, I think it was, I heard a commotion in the yard. Harold, he was the station cook and caretaker, was drunk, staggering around the yard, slamming a 4x2 repeatedly across Cliff's shoulders. Cliff was one of the stockmen. Cliff whimpering, stumbling, walking crab-like in cowboy boots and spurs jangling. "Get out of here, you mongrel," screamed Harold. Mr. Phillips, the manager, subdued Harold, frog-marched both men to the station gate. "Get on to the mission, come back when you're sober." The story did come out. Harold had drunk his stockpiled fortnightly quota of beer, 14 cans, then proceeded to drink the methylated spirits used to start the generator. Cliff had burst in, howling that Harold had stolen his beer ration as well. Well, I got to thinking how booze can destroy a man's life, and I felt grateful for my time off it while I was here. Soon after, I got a job in Papua New Guinea, but I thought how lucky I'd been to live and work in the outback. Flying over the Flinders, I felt a gut wrench of closure, and then exhilaration for the next place I'd be. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod, for transporting us to that very vivid place and time in your life. Finally, we're going to hear from Claire Coleman. Claire G. Coleman has been spending a lot of time at the Wheeler Centre lately. She is a Wirlaman Noongar woman whose ancestral country is in the south coast of Western Australia. Her debut novel, Terra Nullius, published in Australia and the US, and written on a second-hand iPad in a caravan, won the Norma K. Hemming Award and a Black and White Fellowship, and was shortlisted for the Stella Prize and an Aurealis Award. Claire's written essays, short stories, reportage, poetry for publication on multiple national platforms, and is a popular speaker and storyteller. Her second novel, The Old Lie, is just out and gaining rave reviews. Claire will read an extract from her piece, The Song of Concrete.
I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and thank their elders past, present, future. I'd also like to thank Affirm Press and Meg for putting this anthology together, and the other writers, some of whom have possibly never been published before, so congratulations to you, Mob, too. Night has unrolled over Melbourne like an old grey army blanket, threadbare and scratchy. It's cold, the fog's so thick that a white glow precedes the trams as they sneak down Brunswick Street, stalked by glowing red. My bodyguard, her fur sleek and black, shaped a bit like a dingo, but just a touch too chunky, is finishing off half a pizza someone has given her. That's one of the best things about this place. Kebabs, pizza, burgers. I never have to find food for my kelpie. Her puppy dog eyes are junk food magnets. Would your dog like half my pizza? It's the most common question I hear on those streets. The tequila in my gut is bringing fire to my eyes. The falafel roll I have just eaten is heavy in my gut and contains the promise of not hunger, a promise on which it will not immediately deliver. My mandolin is tuned, a few bucks nestled inside its pear-shaped dwelling to convince people to add more. My voice and my head are both lubricated. I start to sing. I've never been much of a singer, and I'm not much better musician. But out here, cross-legged on the street, being barely dodged by drunk people looking for another place to drink, it doesn't really matter. One night, a couple of drunken idiots, brawling unsteadily, fell on me. Luckily, my mandolin was unharmed, but I carried bruises for some time. I strum, throw out a shit-poor rendition of the Ship song by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. The chords are simple. The song is not meant to be sung well. Otherwise, Nick Cave, the musician I'm close to being a fan of, would not be singing it. Some coins clink. A note flutters downwards. Naked legs, jeans, pantyhose, boots, runners, thongs, sandals pass by. Overcoats dangle. I'm jealous of warm coats tonight. Someone stopped to listen. Clink. Across the street and down a bit, a bassist whose name I can never remember is drawing a crowd because, unlike me, he can really play. I'm glad he's there. From time to time, we have passed the tequila back and forth, and he's protected me in the past when someone tried to kick me off my corner with threats of violence. When the bassist backed me up, the aggro person fled, their voice, their sworn abuse trailing them down the street. Yet me and the bassist only know each other enough to say hello. I guess that's the sort of guy he is. I've managed to keep my corner, the best corner in the street, near the light and sounds of late-night souvlaki shop and a bar. It never hurts to play songs the bouncer requests. It's cold tonight. I dread the street on such nights, not the physical street, but the abstract idea of the street. Even with a fleece blanket and a kelpie, I'm not sure we're safe and warm enough. Bus shelters, even Flinders Street Station, where I know there'll be people sleeping, are seldom warm and not safe enough. I'll make enough cash tonight to go to a boarding house or a hostel if I wanted to, but I've never been inside one of those places and I've never felt a strong urge to do it. I have other uses for my money, other reasons to be out in the street busking. Dumb Things by Paul Kelly. The chords are simple, but the changes are fast. I've never been great at that song, but the words speak to me. I have done dumb things. Some of the reasons I'm out in the street come down to that, to mistakes I've made. The rest was just dumb luck. It can happen to pretty much anyone. Enough bad luck, enough things going wrong and you're sleeping on a friend's couches, enough time on couches, and eventually you can end up in a squat, if you're lucky. Sleeping in my car kept me off the street for a while, but shit happens. Dumb things happen. Bad luck happens. Eventually the street happens. There are many paths to losing your home to sleeping rough, but few ways back to housing once you land on the street. It's so cold. Words come to me and I strum a simple chord pattern. One I don't think I will ever remember. One I'm not sure is any good, but I can sing to it. I find myself improvising without really planning to. The first line, "It's really bloody cold," startles a chortle from a passers-by. I keep playing, knowing what I'm playing for, knowing that my emotion from these strangers can translate into cash. It's really bloody cold. The words puff whitely from my mouth. My fingers feel like ice. Truth is beauty. It's so cold my fingers are aching. I miss a chord change and then another one, but nobody notices. It's not like what I'm playing is even a song. The street is so cold that the black steel tram lines are glistening with condensation. The concrete footpaths have turned dark. But this is my street. For now I live out here, 3,000 kilometres from country. And you have to buy the book if you want to hear the rest. I'm sorry. You just have to buy it if you want to hear the rest.
That was just a sneak preview, a taster, a sampler. Thank you so much, Claire, for sharing that beautiful story with its humour and its hardship and its resilience and courage. We're going to have a little bit of a chat between ourselves and then we'll have time for a few questions from the audience, so get your questions ready. All of you obviously love to write, you're driven to write, maybe sometimes you hate it, but you can't stop doing it. I'm interested in what drives your urge to write. What do you enjoy most about it and what do you get out of it? Let's ask Claire first.
I'm not sure I actually enjoy writing. I feel compelled to write though. I mostly feel I'm write because I'm compelled to. I also write because I'm given commissions and people ask me to. But when I'm not actually being asked to write something, I write because I can't stop myself. It's like the compulsion to tell a story grabs hold and forces me to do it.
Have others experienced that feeling that you've just got to get the story out, or is it more a case of exploring? Or let's ask Ayub, you said that you've been getting back into writing lately after having a bit of a break from it. What's that been like for you?
I've started writing properly. This has really inspired me, and I think I've really found a channel to unpack. I have dyslexia, so it's a real struggle, but I also love a challenge. So it's I'm really enjoying it, and I found it's a lot cheaper than therapy.
That's so true.
It's And also, you know, it's a lot easier than exercising. So.
Exercising your keyboard fingers or your index finger, a bit of hand exercise. Jody, what do you get out of creative forms of writing? Because you've shifted into that mode fairly recently. What does it offer you that other more straightforward forms don't?
Well, I think if we step back just a few years to have a look, like my whole life has been dominated by very formal writing, rules, regulations, the whole lot. And if anyone can imagine turning up on the doorstep and meeting Dr. Meg, the word doctor, for the first day, and she wanted me to write something about how I felt about that. And I went home and I was almost in shock. I'm like, I don't know. And there was a few more other conversations that people were asking me, what do I like doing? I'd had such a rigid life that was controlled by everything survival, that I actually didn't know anything about myself. So the few weeks that I spent with the other participants and Meg, I actually discovered so many different things about myself, and I wouldn't say that it was all exciting. It was a bit frightening as well, because I'd never actually allowed myself to be emotional. So it turned a leaf for me to be able to then express myself in other ways that I'd never knew that I could. And that has helped me in some kind of way better than therapy has. So I agree.
And I got to say, Jody, just once you took the lid off, boy, there was a lot of stories in there. That, I mean, what's in the book is a fragment of, you know, what was produced in those workshops. Yeah, there's some more, and that poem of hers online that's really beautiful. You'd like to look at the project website, homelesswriting.org it is. Rod, what about you? You wrote poetry and fiction and memoir, and you have for a long time. Do you have a favourite form or a favourite thing to write?
Yeah, I like poetry, but it's a hard one for me. It really makes me have to exercise my mind quite a lot. Short stories, yeah, I quite like those, and I use them because for some unknown reason, suddenly a memory will pop up of like the jackaroo or a few other things in my life, and I put it down. And I think it's like what some of the other people have said tonight. It's been kind of cathartic in a way. I was diagnosed with bipolar when I was a kid, and had to live with that. And this was one way of reducing the violence that was in my head. I look over a large part of my life actually as probably I'm no different to many other people, that I was either running away from something or I was galloping to something. There was never that peace of mind in the middle. The economists say the bell curve. I was on either end a lot of the time. Or when you get into the middle there somewhere, you can get some kind of peace of mind, but just by the physical act of writing, and also getting my voice heard as well, because I suffered a lot of lower self-esteem. It's really prompted me to write.
Thank you. Thanks all for sharing those thoughts. Writers explore. I mean, place was the theme of the book, but it was a loose theme. It wasn't like write about a place. Place just had to appear there somewhere, and it's pretty hard to escape. I mean, you always are somewhere, right? So it's a good thing to theme a book around. I'm interested in the idea of one particular kind of place, and that is the idea of home. A number of writers explored this or touched upon this in their pieces. Jody, you grew up in country Victoria, and you explore your connection with nature and with water, and several of the writers in the book also do this. Gavril writes about it, Patrick, Katara, and Paul B. How important is nature to you? What do you think humans need to be connected to nature?
There's definitely, whether we're in the city or in the country, there's always something happening, and there's always something interfering with your natural ability to just stop, think, breathe. So I don't know. I just find that I have never been afforded the luxury to be able to sit and relax and enjoy what was around me. So I actually missed so much, and I was quite sterile inside. Everything was clinical, so every day was clockwork, and it actually made my relationship suffer, not only with my parents and my siblings, and we get along great, but it's no emotional connection. And I find that for a very long time, up until the last couple of years, I've raised my children the same way. They're very independent people, very strong-willed, you know, very capable, but they don't do cuddles, and they don't sit close to people. But I created that because I didn't have the opportunity to be in a natural place. So I use that now more to actually just be able to listen to myself. The sounds and everything actually allow you to just think freely and ask that question before. What do I like? What makes me happy? And it gives me the answers.
And that often happens for you sitting near water, you mentioned, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Claire, your beautiful piece ended with saying that you were living 3,000 kilometres from country, and that's still true. What's your sense of home, and how do you create a sense of home when you are so far from your place of origin?
Well, my ancestral country will always be home, no matter what. Not the city I was born. I was born in Perth, but Perth isn't home either. My ancestral, I've got a special emotional connection with my ancestral country, and everything that good in my life, like my writing career and all that stuff, started when I returned there. On the other hand, though, if I'm not there, the closest thing I have to home is Melbourne. Because I've been in Melbourne on and off for most of my life now. It's been well over 20 years. And it's funny because when I was living on the streets in Melbourne, the streets themselves felt like home. You kind of, after a while, you can develop a sort of connection with them. And even now, like years after, when I no longer live on those streets, I can still feel that sort of connection with the street itself. It's like you spend enough time sitting on a street corner, and that street corner becomes as familiar as your own skin. So home's a funny thing in general anyway.
That's really interesting, that idea that a place becomes home through knowing it and it being familiar to you. That's a really interesting point. Ayub and Rod are both, like a number of writers in the book and myself with my exotic accent, immigrants. So I wondered if you could both speak briefly about your own experiences of Ayub, you were very young when you came here. Do you remember, coming to Australia? Did you have a sense of what it was like as a place, and how long did it take you to develop, for it to feel like home, or Melbourne to feel like home?
I came here when I was 6. I wouldn't say I could remember the days, but there are definitely some significant, milestones that happened through up until that moment and coming to Australia that I remember vividly. I've got scars on my face from the refugee camp from before I came to Australia that will always remind me of those times. So there's always going to be those memories, but I think the memories that will always stay with me and that will always come back to haunt me is not that journey of coming to Australia. It's what happened between then and now. And I think that to me is just like when Claire was saying, there's sense of home is where you feel comfortable. And there was times where I remember getting picked up from school and being driven to a different house and, coming in there and being told this is your new room and everything being set up and all my clothes and everything being set up like nothing happened. And that happened so many times that, I had to remember the streets. I had to remember, how to get back to my friends. So, so home is, I guess, what you feel comfortable with. And the streets for me were what I felt comfortable with, and even to this day.
Thank you. And Rod, what about you? You came to Australia some time ago as well as an adult. Did you have a picture of what it was like before you got here? And did it take you a while to feel like, to make your home here?
I came to Australia as a young bloke, 22 I think I was, to get away from the rain. I didn't really, you know, I was born in Yorkshire and lived in Lancashire and went through that stuff. And I wasn't getting on too well with people either. And it wasn't, funnily enough, in the 1970s even a good place to get a job of any kind there. I think it's probably a lot worse now. But it did take me a while to adjust when I got here. As I said, I was the last of the 10-pound poms, so I should be grateful for that. I know for the first week they put us in this new immigrants hostel in Ashfield, I think it was, in Sydney. I don't know about you, but the summers always seemed much, much hotter back then. I don't know why, but it took me a long time, and one of the first impressions I got was in Bondi, the Aussie pub. It just reminded me of a swimming pool at home, you know, with the tiles around and cold beer. It's quite funny. But no, it did take a while, but certainly the experience in the Flinders, you know, sort of rocketed me into that kind of Australian style of living. I was very, very grateful and blessed for me being able to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think we've got time for some questions from the audience. Before we shift to that, I will just note we're going to wrap up in about 10 minutes. And I should say that we have our wonderful booksellers up the back there somewhere, Hares and Hyenas, so shout out to them. Little arm waving there. So there will be books for sale, and you can chat to the contributors who will have a little badge, sticker actually, on them that says we are here. It's how we can identify each other, because most of us haven't met each other in person. There may be some stray stickers, because my darling Charlie was wonderfully helpful in giving out the stickers and quite generous with the stickers. So. Charlie, yeah.
Where is he?
I don't know. He might have gone to sleep. I'm not sure where he is. So we'll and afterwards, all the book contributors and our key supporters we have been invited to head upstairs to the Writers' Victoria Library for some drinks and some mingling. Unfortunately, we cannot fit all of the crowd in there. This was just because the event sold out and we just didn't have room to put the food in the room. So it's a good thing in a way, but grab them before they go upstairs if you want your book signed. So we'll have a few questions from the audience, and just a reminder that in the book and here tonight on stage, the writers have shared some really personal experiences. So just a reminder, you know, to keep our questions, you know, respectful. But I'm sure you have questions. So we have ushers roving with the mic. Thank you.
Oh, is it on? Yes, it is. Thank you. When we think about homelessness, I guess we imagine that the needs would be a sandwich, a warm bed, a shower, you know, somewhere safe to be. It's very interesting that the need to express yourself creatively with writing was an idea. It's taken obviously some time to come to fruition. What's going to happen from here with the artistic expression? Art therapy is quite popular. Is it going to be more projects of this kind? What do you think?
Any funding bodies in the audience? All the writers were paid for their work in this book, and that was made possible through seed funding by Street Smart Australia and by the grant from the City of Melbourne Arts Funding Program. So in order to run these programs and for people to be able to participate in them, they do need to be funded. And it's not a replacement for a home, but that's my perspective as editor. I'll be quiet now and let the writers speak.
I have had some success as a writer, but I've taught workshops all over the place. I've taught in prisons and taught workshops here at the Wheeler Centre. I find that anyone who's given opportunity to express their emotions comes out of the experience generally feeling in a better emotional state. So I think it's important that we don't underestimate the therapeutic potential of writing down your story. a prisoner in a prison workshop I did actually said that writing down her story was like telling it to somebody, and as soon as you tell someone your story, you feel better. And even people who write down their story and then never show it to anyone else, it's like it is such a relief to think that somebody, even if it's just a piece of paper, knows about it. So I think certainly if there's any funding bodies out there, I think you should actually help out with more projects like this.
I always thought, like, I used to trip out when I used to hear, you know, my white friends have a journal and a diary. I was like, what? You know, and then I remember going to, you know, child psychologists and adult psychologists and being told, you know, write in a journal or a diary. I'm like, what are you on about? That shit works.
Anybody want to add anything, or that shit works pretty much sums it up? Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. Have another question out there? Is this Gregory? Hey, Gregory. Gregory's come a long way to be here. He's one of our contributors, so welcome to Melbourne. You didn't like it the first time. I hope it's better this time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Meg. Yeah, Melbourne's a beautiful place when you don't have to live on the streets in the middle of winter. Yeah, thank you, and thanks for inviting me. Thank you to all the storytellers, beautiful, and I agree with everything, but I'm interested in Rodney, and if Rodney has been back to his place of youth before he ventured out into the Aussie unknown.
Quite follow that, you mean?
Have you been back to the UK?
I've been back to England on a few occasions, not that many actually. Really for family reasons, and never dodged the rain though. Never, that was always there. Actually, I'm going next week to Ireland for the Irish winter. That's going to be fun. I love that.
What was it like going back when you've been away? What was that like for you?
The first few days was great, and then I just kept looking at that return ticket and wanted to get home again. But talking about family and place, I mean, my family, my blood family, are very rooted in their Yorkshire spirit, and I had quite a battle with my family about leaving the home, actually, to come to Australia, and it's still a battle, and it has been, of relationships with my family. So it wasn't all gravy, but yeah, I was happy to come back to Australia, to the tropics. Yeah, couldn't stand that rain.
Do we have another question?
Thanks for sharing your stories, everyone. Abe, you talked about that moment where you got government housing and how that was a big change for you. I'd love to hear from you and everyone talking about any other moments where the big moments where they sort of found more stability.
I think there's nothing really tangible that I could say for me stability. I think it's a bit of a combination of things, but I think just knowing, unfortunately, you know, I still have the survival mentality. I can't speak for everybody and for the other contributors, but for me, homelessness isn't just something that you experience. It's something that stays with you for life, and there's that sense of trauma always, that fear of becoming homeless again. And unfortunately, I haven't gotten to the point where that's no longer a viable fear. So I think knowing that I've got a job, which means I've got money, which will help all those other things for me, is something that has really helped. And that's why I've always neglected studying, because for me, I realised that if I've got money, then I'll always have a roof over my head.
Can I put a twist on it? I actually, where I live, I've turned it into a home and it's fantastic. The shift of becoming stable for me sort of feels a little bit different because I moved around so often and that was career orientated and I never gave it a second thought. But I don't actually feel like where I live can always be my home, and I always wake up struggling with the fact that it could be taken away from me, because everything in my world, if you have a look at the way that I am paid each fortnight, the way that the bank runs the interest rates on my money and my borrowing capacity, the way that I access my public transport is all completely reliant on the people that are in government and all of the structural things that are out here in Victoria for me as a person living in Victoria. And they can change today, tomorrow, the next day. So my life is never safe and it's never secure. It's only the best of what I can make of it today.
I met a girl. That's the moment things started changing. I met a girl. We went travelling together. She's sitting in the audience. She'll probably blush in a second. She's sitting right there. Yeah, there she goes. Yeah, and then from there, we went travelling. I started writing, and this year I'm renting a house. I've got my name on a house lease for the first time in at least 10 years, maybe longer. And so it was meeting Lily, and then writing some books, and then finally. You wouldn't think it. You'd think that becoming an award-winning author is enough, but no, you have to become an award-winning author and write a whole bunch of other stuff in order to pay some rent in Australia. It's been hard, but things can get better. It's just really, really, really hard, and I still fear ending up homeless again. Always will.
Rod, did you want to add anything, or do you have anything to add about a moment when you found stability?
The first thing that came to mind would be a bit flippant, would be that when I started getting my old age pension, really stabilised things a lot. Most of my life, regardless of the wages or the salary, for most of my life, I never had enough. So yeah, that was it, just stability. But also in writing, starting to write in the 90s and going back to university and starting to try and get into society a bit more than I had. That's all those little things were starting to stabilise me and go for what really everybody wants, and that's peace of mind. That's what I aim for, and it's a wonderful country to do that. Thank you.
We've got 93 seconds left. Anybody got a really fast question? Great. Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Rod. It just sparked a question, Mimi, and I understand the value of peace of mind, and I want to throw that back at you. Do you all have peace of mind, or are you close to that?
What's the second bit?
Or are you close to that idea of peace of mind?
Oh, I am. I would say, I've said before recently that I am at this point in my life the most contented I have ever been. And I don't think that's going to change because I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
Anyone else got peace of mind?
I don't. I'm anxious as hell. It's 2019. Like the world's burning. We've got I've got a roof over my head, but peace of mind. I'm far from it. In general.
Jody?
I think I have come to the end of the mandatory appointments that were day after day after day. And during that sort of 5-6 years, I had little to no control. I just went where I was told to go, ticked every box that I had to tick, so then I could move on to the next level. I think I'm now in control, and my doctor says, "Can you come and see me?" And I say, "I'll come when I'm ready." So I think somewhere in that, I have some peace of mind that I actually have taken control back and making the choices for myself and what's best for myself, instead of being forced into just living life the way that society needs me to fit in.
Yeah, so agency, I guess, you know, taking back control of your life, being able to do that. There's a red screen flashing. I believe that means we're at the end. I'd like to thank all of our speakers. I'd like to thank Councillor and all of the writers and artists, and you for being here. Affirm Press, all of our partners. Thank you so much, everyone. And
thank you, Meg.
Oh, sorry.
There's books up the back, and look for the stickers. I'm sure there's some autographs. You can collect some autographs.